welcome to my presentation of Did I Remember All My Slides? Yeah, as Sufjan said, I'm the VP of Product at Blackbird. What do I do as a VP of Product? Well, same as we're going to do here today, as with me on stage. I think about language technology. And I then also implement it, of course. But thinking about language technology is one of my favorite pastime activities, which is also my professional activity, so that's really great. And at Blackbird, what do we do actually? We help you build solutions, innovations, automations, orchestrations. So really, any word that you need that ends with ION, we probably sell it. But if it's still unclear after the presentation of like what we could in theory do together, definitely come to our booth after, and well, we can open up the world. Opening up the world is kind of what we're going to do here and see, well, as the title of the presentation says, what is really possible with language technology in our industry today and tomorrow and the day after. Just for my idea, so first rule, I want a lot of interaction. So if you have anything to shout at me, do so immediately, because then we'll have a live debate. I love that. Second thing, just a little bit like knowing the audience by a show of hands, who would consider themselves representing a language service provider, right? And who would say we are really inside an enterprise and we're being a language department? Okay, yeah. And who's Dutch? All right, there go half my jokes. I know someone who speaks Dutch, but okay, noted. I love to start every presentation, a little bit of framing, and instead of saying, what am I going to talk about? Let's start with what am I not going to talk about, because that might be just as relevant to you right now. I'm not going to talk about this. I think there's other platforms for that. LinkedIn comes to mind. If you need anything about this, go to LinkedIn. But that's really not the point of this presentation, and neither is this. I know this might be on your bingo card. We're not talking about this, so you cannot cross it off yet. So is equality of AI, again, quality, what kind of word is that? Here the philosopher already comes to the stage, as you see. I don't know. Maybe. Depends. Like, it's, again, really not what we are looking at when we're looking at building language technology, of course. So we care way more about the bigger picture. And the bigger picture, I feel, is that every couple of years, new innovation will happen. We had it 10 years ago, we got statistical machine translation. We got neural machine translation a little bit later. Now we're on the LLM wave. You can count on it that in a year or three, there will be a new innovation in the AI space, and everybody will flock to that, and it will be really great because it will have some other capabilities or some other features. But there will still remain constants. And kind of the topic today is how can you prepare your organization for that? What are the constants in this case, language technology? How can you best prepare your organization for that? And how should you change your technology strategy for that, basically? Well, like I said, we work, title presentation again, we're going to talk about the solutions and opportunities in this space that present that. But before that, I already talked about what am I not going to talk about. As Sufjan introduced me properly, as a philosopher, I have to describe the world to you first. The absolute hard truth, how does the world work? So we're going to start with that first. There exist two kinds of people. Most of my favorite jokes start that way, right? There's two kinds of people. Those who can extrapolate from incomplete data. Okay, see, someone gets it, great. No, in our world, the world that we live in the language industry, at an LSP, at an enterprise, working for localization, we have this idea that we have some end user who sees language in multiple different ways, and we got someone who's sending them language. Why do we do that? Why do we do anything? What is the meaning of life? Well, certainly in this context. Because some line has to go up. That's it. There's no other reason. That line can be profit, revenue, users, success, happiness, carrots. It can be anything, but why we do anything in our industry is somebody sends content to a user, and they do that for business reasons. And that's so important to keep in mind with everything that we do, and definitely in your technology journey that you're going on or you're already on right now. So, that's you. You're the super person in this story, because, as we all know, that person does not have all the knowledge to send all the language to the end user. And that's where you come in. So the model that we've created in our industry is, okay, first we send it to the super person, they're going to do something, then we send it back, and then we send it to the user. And I believe that is about how 99% of the industry really operates. I see some people nodding. That's great, means I'm not completely making things up here. That's always good validation. But something interesting has happened, and definitely in the last couple of years. Everybody actually has a computer. I assume you have a computer. I assume you're doing it, otherwise you wouldn't be here at Plunet Summit, of course. But with the creation of the hype around AI, ChatGPT coming onto the scene, a lot of C-level people were starting to ask ourselves, like, hey, suddenly language is very interesting. Can we do anything with that, with AI? But because everyone in this whole world has a computer, everybody kind of started doing the same thing. And then you get this situation, right? So, because everybody now has ChatGPT, can everybody suddenly start translating? And, well, props to my wife, she came up with this meme last week, so I had to put it in the presentation. This is where the opportunity starts. Because the opportunity is in this direction, right? So we can, instead of copy-pasting everything into any place where you get an AI, so in an LLM prompt or in for example, DeepL, you just copy-paste it all into there. You can actually take a look at the process that you're doing of how are these translations actually created, and therefore, where can we add the value, where's the opportunity in this space. And that straight line, that direction is what we're talking about here. And I think I've already been talking for 10 minutes what we aren't going to talk about, and finally we have arrived. What are we going to talk about? So I want to zoom in on this interaction between you and your client. And again, the client can be, as an LSP, your client, or other departments, of course, in your enterprise. We need to zoom in there because that's where basically every technology, every orchestration, every whatever really starts. Most important rule after interact with me is the perfect solution does not exist. I think we've embraced that very early on. There is not one workflow that you can implement into any company and expect successful result. Expect that line to go up or go up as high as you want it to. And I think that's the beauty of our industry. That's why I fell in love with it. Like, we can work with non-profit clients in South America or a harbor company in Rotterdam, right? They have very different processes, very different needs. They're very different industries, but yet our industry has to serve all of them. And no way that we can serve all of them with the same solution. Like, that's a pipe dream. So the basis of what you're going to see now is take these ideas to heart. And now you have to be the consultant yourself to decide, am I going to implement this for this person or that for that person? Which solution fits best to a certain category of clients? And I don't have that answer. That's where you come in. So that's where we help each other. Any case, what can technology do for you? So we need to start here first. We established that every customer of ours has a computer. And most likely the thing that they want to translate is in that computer. So instead of them having to manually send it to you, right? So like, hey, I got something that you want to translate. Can you translate it for me? I mean, I feel like all those emails, I've seen too many of them. How about you say, well, client, we got this new fancy thing, and we can actually connect to your content. So instead of you always having to send it to us, let us just take it from you. And this is the basis of any further advancement in technology that you can actually create, because without this, nothing else scales. Of course, there's many different ways of doing this. Many, well, we have called them connectors in our industry. I personally don't like the word connector, but that's the jargon that we have chosen, so I have to follow it. Nevertheless, what you're basically able to do is tell your client, look, we're going to discuss what content gets translated when. And if you have a basis for that, then you can create an automation. Then you can say, okay, every time we see new content coming in, we're just going to automatically do our thing, do what we do best, we translate it, and we send it back. So the client doesn't have to think about that. That's value you're adding, significant value you're adding, but also it allows you, again, to start orchestrating new things. So this is what we call, or what I would say, is low-hanging fruit, hence the pineapple. Remember, low-hanging fruit. You have to start here. We're going to move on from the pineapple. We're going to go a little spicier. So this was opportunity number 1. Now we're going to opportunity number 2. The second opportunity is getting spicier, but we're not nearly there yet. This is something that some of you have already started doing. But maybe not to the fullest extent. Maybe you're still experimenting with this idea, this technology. I mean, I assume most of you have workflows where you say, okay, this content we're going to translate with MT, and this content we're going to translate with humans, right? We're just going to send it to translators, and when it's done, send it back. That is quite an unnuanced approach. So what a lot of technology companies offer you nowadays is automatic quality checking, MTQE, for example. We're basically checking the output of machine translation. So a workflow that you can envision is whenever content comes in, again, this could be automated, right? Everything just immediately comes in. We're always going to do a machine translation, or AI translation, however you want to call it. Again, whatever AI you use, that's your business. And then we're going to have another machine do an evaluation. And instead of then sending the whole file to the translator, basically saying, oh, we already did like MTQE scoring and this helps you out supposedly. What about you then say, well, now that's a decision point. And we're going to put in certain thresholds and say, okay, if 99% of the segments are good, we're just going to send it out and send it back. We're fine. We don't take the overhead of still sending it to the translator. Otherwise, whatever your thresholds are, again, depends on your use case. Otherwise, we're going to send it to a translator and then it comes back. So the whole workflow becomes a lot more nuanced. You use the technologies that are to your disposal to think big, to think not, okay, we're going to do everything in order, always the same, but no, we're going to make decision points. And decision points on, at this point, we're going to send it back to the customer. Now it's fine, we've put our thresholds. How you come up with those thresholds, that's the art. And that's what I think a really good linguist can monitor for a long time, how to set those thresholds and send it back. If you're really big on MTQE, this is basically already something you've probably experimented with, maybe not in the same configuration, but to us that's not spicy, not nearly spicy enough. We're going to make it way spicier. Because with MTQE you have to rely on this vague notion of quality and that one AI can assess the quality of another AI, which as both philosopher computer science that I am a little dubious about. But okay. What if that quality assessment, so that assessment, do I need to perform further linguistic actions on certain content? What if that assessment is not coming from yet another AI, but coming from that line that goes up itself? It's when you publish data and you basically look at how is my translation performing in the real world? What business effect is my translation having in the real world? And based on that data, I'm going to make decisions about, do I need to revisit this content? Do I need to look at it again? Do I need to transform it in some other way? Is the term base right? Any question you might have, but it is always a question that only pops up after you see how the content is performing in the real world. So an example of that is we get the content. Again, this was the automated part. We just keep getting it in. We're doing, in this case, a machine translation, but you can do exactly the process that we just did, fill in the blank. We're sending it back to a lot of users, and then the user itself, they will be able to send data back. Of course, we get that through our client, through the integration that we have with them. So envision if this is simple marketing content, then we've got a lot of analytics tools online already that are able to say, okay, this is the conversion rate, this is the total amount of users, is this what we want? And you can, for example, compare, like, okay, for this language, the conversion rate is way lower than other languages. Well, maybe there's something wrong with that language, so let's go and look at it. Doing that already gives you such an important leg up, such an important value that you're adding to your customer. And this is not new, right? The marketing industry has been doing this for a long time already. SEO sprung from this. So we have 2 different versions of a page and one word is changed. Which one does better? Like, it makes only sense that we're looking at it from that way. So why are we not approaching translations the same way either? Why are we not getting that data from marketing departments in order to make our translations better? This is what we call, and we will call, shifting left, but we'll get there. So yeah, the spiciness went up. Let's have a look. How can we make it even more spicy? We're going to get way more abstract at some point. If you think about it, translation is a form of content repurposing on a one-dimensional axis. What does that mean? It means that I have some content in one shape, and I'm going to translate in the language axis. So, for example, I have some content in French, I'm going to put it in Spanish. So it's repurposed from one audience to another audience, and the only difference between the 2 audiences is that they speak a different language. What if we take that idea of content repurposing and start looking at it in multiple dimensions? So you can say, well, I've got certain content that's created for a specific audience. These are the characteristics of that audience. For example, we add a second dimension that is maybe age group. And say, okay, I got something for age 30 to 40 people who speak French. But my new target audience is a lot older or younger. So it's not only the language that's different, but it's also a different target group. And so you have to do something different with the content. I mean, of course you would, given what we talked about, analytics, etc., data performance. Everything is about that line that goes up, whether you like it or not. If we move it into more dimensions, so for example, we've called this, we had this in the industry already for a long time, and we called it transcreation. We created a new word for it. But I would say that when you start doing it on a large scale, transcreation really doesn't scale anymore. So that's really the question. How can you do that multiple dimension repurposing on a large scale? Again, find the right AI system that does it for you, but for some solutions, for some use cases, it probably already works. What I then wanted to show is, well, we think about then multiple vectors, multiple dimensions of doing this repurposing. What if language is not a dimension anymore? What if there are dimensions in this repurposing that you're doing, but language is not one of them? So you're saying, actually, in this case, it's the platform that the content is for. So on this side, we have young people who read newspapers. Let's just say, if that's the case, we want to repurpose it for older people who read on their phone. Okay, sure. Clearly, this is not a real statement. But the idea is there, right? We're not doing just translation anymore. And again, this is how you might want to think about content in the future. Like, language is not the only dimension anymore that you might be working on. Because we're moving to a world where everything is more and more hyper-personalized. And we see the scale that these language processing machines can bring us. So on the scale that they can bring us, if they're good enough, again, that was not the topic of the presentation, but if they're good enough, we should be able to go to a world where we are getting content in from our client, and we're able to, using all the tools that we just described, say, okay, for different audiences, we're creating different variations. And we're doing that in such an automated way, giving the tools that we have. We have AI, we got analytics, we got MTQE, all the orchestration, connectivity, we got it all, but we're now creating value for our customer because they don't have to create 5 different, whatever you want to call it, landing pages for different audience. No, they just create one. This is the vision that we have as a company. This is the landing page we want to create, and you just create it for different audiences, not just on language, but on multiple vectors and differences. So that's officially, if you're counting, that's idea number 4 that you can apply. And immediately after that, given how machines have become way more, and the hype word is multimodal, you should be able to say, well, it's not just this idea that the client is sending us that we need to repurpose, that we want to transform into the same medium for a different customer, but it's also for different end client for different medium, right? So it's not just text in, text out, it's text in, text out, video out, image out, audio out, right? Different platforms require different approaches to content, and given how, well, as we have seen, machines are getting really good at transforming between these different mediums, certainly that is possible for you as well. So the language department or the language service provider, in what I've been telling so far, can really be that consultant, that owner in the company or the owner for a company, that takes the idea of, okay, this is your vision, this is the content that you want to clearly distribute among your clients, and we're going to make sure that it is appropriate, that it exactly for the people that you want to target, that they're able to be targeted. And the stronger that, or the more accurate, however you want to define that, the more accurate that these machines get, the more personalized your content can be. So if that's the case, then language should not be your only vector anymore. I still have not had anyone shout at me yet, so I mean, come shout at me after if you really want to shout at me, sure. What does this really mean? So in this whole model where you have this end client, you have this client of yours, and you are moving way closer to your client. You're providing more and more service and more value. You're getting really, really, really close up and personal, right? Almost like you're sitting on their lap, because you should be. That is the way that you will be a value partner, a valued technology integrator, technology provider, however you want to call it, because you'll be able to use that exactly what they want, and you're creating value out of or for the linguistic assets in their company. And so the last slide that I have for you is really about what if we take this another step further, because we've been talking about first doing automation and orchestration, secondly, being clever with machines and what they can do and how you nuance that with human workflows. We talked about analytics, using real-world data in order to improve or go over certain content again. Then we talked about, okay, we can really repurpose different content around different dimensions, not just language, and in multiple forms and media. But all of that still was the idea of a workflow being, the client says something, and you go to work, and then you give it back in one form or another. But maybe that is, at some point, not the world we live in anymore. At some point, you being that middleman starts to fade, and instead it will be more of a system that embodies the language knowledge, that knows the values, the term bases, however you want to call it. I don't think at that point we will talk in terms of term bases and TMs anymore. But in that sense, whenever an end user wants to interact with linguistic data, it becomes a query. It becomes a question like, okay, I need to serve this to this user. These are the parameters of this user. How are we going to do that? And the system will provide an answer. And it will be up to you to manage that, to validate it. What's the performance? Is that line still going up? Right? Are we still good? It will be up to the end user to provide the necessary things and vision and strategy. You to perform the linguistic checking. But ultimately, it will be a system that will not truly be a workflow anymore in the same sense that we have it now. It will be something that's relatively autonomous and therefore extremely spicy. I don't know. This is not something that I believe companies are doing yet, but if we're just being futuristic, this might definitely happen in the future. And it's definitely how we see it happening and leaning. So I think that's all the emojis you can take for today. I deliberately don't want much text on my slides, so just, abstract concepts should be abstract concepts. Let's not define them in words. Like I said before, if you really want to know more or, philosophize with us or innovate with us, then go and check us out. And if you still want to shout at me, do that right now, because thank you. And I enjoy the rest of Plunet Summit.
I get the microphone, getting there.
Matthias, thank you. It's interesting vision you're proposing here. A general question, and I'll ask you to put your weatherman's cap on. When do you predict the collapse of segmentation as a primary part of our workflow? When do you think it's going to no longer be predicated on segmenting files?
The reason we have segments is to assist in the CAT interface and to be able to do TM matching. So in that sense, it might already be breaking down. Of course, segmentation will still be very valuable, even in the idea of data as a resource more than TM, which I think it should be. And segmentation will still be required there, but it might not be visible to the end operator, I would say. Right? I wouldn't say translator anymore in the same sense. But okay, technically speaking, you still need it because you still need to, see, okay, these sentences are the same, and therefore you need to segment them in some way. But it won't be segmentation that will be super visible anymore, because it's like creating an embedding. You really don't know what's in there. So segmentation is just, okay, we're splitting sentences, and these are the rules. Yeah, that will be probably go, and it will be more vague in that sense.
Okay, so in your example about the quality routing, it'll be more of a view you offer the user, to handle those.
Yeah, exactly. Because segmentation always loses and introduces data at the same time, right? So it might be muddy in that sense. So to me, your linguistic data is more in a data lake, for the technical term, where you're then querying it from it. And you don't necessarily know exactly the points where it's querying. Even though I don't like this empiric approach to computer science, it is how the best results are created right now.
Thank you.
No problem.